Welcome to the Detroit Lions News Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chapp, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. Before I came on, we had some very, very big breaking news that happened with Lee McNeil being sent to IR. This is very, very tough because Lee McNeil is one of your best players. So there's going to be a lot of people coming in, so we're going to let them get in before. But if you're new to the podcast, you're on Apple, you're on Spotify, you can subscribe. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can watch from there as well. But we're going to talk about the McNeil impact. We're going to talk about Laporta. We're going to talk about this offense, and obviously with the loss of Lee McNeil for the foreseeable future until potentially week 18 against the Vikings, we're talking about a pretty big loss. And let's get to it. Just the news and the notes of the day. News and the notes of the day. Lee McNeil has been put on IR. They signed Kindle Veldor, who I don't even know who that is, but to the active roster from the practice squad. So he was on the practice squad. I can't imagine he'd be huge help, but obviously they do need cornerbacks, especially if someone gets injured. They released Raymond Johnson from the practice squad, and they signed Tyson Alu. He was a former Pittsburgh Steeler. That's where I remember him from. And they signed Matt Farnack to the practice squad. So here's what you got. Lee McNeil being put on IR is just the absolute biggest blow to this defense that already needed pass rush. They needed a interior rush, because if you look at Lee McNeil, just look at the stat. Lee McNeil, 87.9 PFF grade. I really don't value Pro Football Focus, but when you look at this, he's second among Lions defenders, and he's fifth among all defensive interior pass rushers. You just lost that. So who's going to come in? Who's going to help you out? Because we already know we don't have James Houston right now. We don't have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. We think we're going to get Alex Anzalone back. There's been a bunch of guys. Emmanuel Mosley, he's out. Obviously, we've seen him for 2 snaps and then boom, gone. So it's an interesting time for this Detroit Lions team because they have a lot of issues defensively. We all know that. And the one thing that they could least afford is one of their big time pass rushers like Lee McNeil or Hutch getting hurt. And obviously, with the Lee McNeil injury, that opens up a little bit of a sore spot. Now, there's a positive to this and a negative to this. We're going to get into the positive first. This offense is going to carry you. They're first in 20-plus yard plays. They're second in yards per game. They're third in yards per play. They're fourth in rushing yards per game. They're fourth in passing yards per game. Fourth in rushing average per game. Fourth in rushing TDs per game. And rushing TDs. And they're sixth in points per game. From here on out, you're going to need this offense to carry you. And what you're seeing coming to you this week, Chicago, it's potentially going to be a weather game. It's potentially going to be snowing. So it's going to be critical to have the running attack on point, because if we look at this defense, like, as much as we were worried about it before, we have to be we have to be so worried about it this week. I'm moving forward because you got the Chicago Bears, you got Russell Wilson, the Broncos. He's a guy that can get outside the pocket. You got Josh Dobbs, you got Dak Prescott, all on the schedule. So you're going to get your full share of quarterbacks that can run out of the pocket. And with Lee McNeil being out, it's going to be interesting what they do. And this is where Aaron Glenn's going to have to earn his money, period. I mean, if you're talking about Aaron Glenn and you're talking about, he hasn't done a good job of game planning. Well, now you're going to have to game plan. Now you don't have the luxury of having a Lee McNeil. You don't have now Hutch. We thought Hutch was getting double before and tripled before and just hogtied by other offensive linemen. It's going to be even worse now because there's no Lee McNeil. So it's going to open up a spot of opportunity for Broderick Martin. It's going to open up a spot for Bohanna. It's going to open up an opportunity for Benito Jones, Isaiah Buggs to get back in the fold, Levi Onwuzurike to resurrect his career. Those are the guys that you're going to be relying on for the foreseeable future. And this is a much tougher schedule than we first imagined when we came into this stretch where you were going against the Bears, the Broncos. You knew the Cowboys game was going to be tough. You knew the Vikings games was going to be tough. But now that the Packers are on your heels, they look pretty damn good, and their schedule's pretty light. It's a lot lighter than yours. There's a lot. There's really a time of emphasis to get this thing going, and I look at Monday. I look at Monday, and I think this is a must win. Sunday. I look at Sunday as a must win, an absolute must win. Because if you don't win Sunday, then you go into the Denver game, and then you're talking about potentially you going into the Denver game needing to win. Because if you're going to have to go into Minnesota and go into Dallas, where Dallas has not lost at home, you're really pushing it. So Chicago this week is a must win. Let's get to the comments. Let's see what people are saying. From Dwayne Keene, he said Sam Laporta had a great game. He's doing awesome in his rookie season. Yeah, we're going to get to Sam Laporta because I have such an admiration for the draft pick of Sam Laporta. Now I have a little bit of issues with the way that we look at it. I mean, losing Lee McNeil isn't ideal, but the fact of the matter is you don't have anybody on the other side or another defensive tackle that could really rush the passer. And now that McNeil is gone, now Hutch is going to get all the coverage, and that's just not good. It's interesting because when I had this show sheet up, I was going to talk about the offense. What would you prefer, the offense being bad and the defense being really good, or would you prefer the defense to be really bad but the offense be pretty good? Here's the thing. I think that the offense has done a marvelous job. I think the defense has been better than most people really are giving it credit for. Now we're going to get into this portion of the schedule with no Lee McNeil. I think that's going to be a very, very hard thing for us to do. But moving forward, I mean, I think the defense, for the most part, has done a pretty decent job. They're injured. No, like I said, no Houston, no Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, no Emmanuel Mosley. Those are three players that you were relying on at the beginning of the year that you don't have right now, and you haven't had for the foreseeable future. The lucky part is you went against some pretty horrific quarterbacks. So and offenses. Like we look at the Falcons and we go, wow, like Desmond Ridder. No. If you look at the Buccaneers, I mean, they have some guys that can really hurt you on the outside, but Baker Mayfield, but it's just when we played the good teams like the Ravens, when you played the Chargers, good offensive team, you had to score a lot of points, and you couldn't do it against the Ravens, and then it's going to have to carry this team because I like Sam Laporta coming out of the draft class, but if you look at what he's been able to do, okay, this is an NFL Twitter account. They said, is Sam Laporta already one of the best tight ends in the league this rookie season so far? 64 receptions, 679 yards, 6 touchdowns. When you look at Sam Laporta, and then you look at the fact that he is 398 yards away from he's going to break Mike Ditka's rookie tight end receiving record. Can he do it? Absolutely. And they're going to need him. They're going to need him. It's the way Sam Laporta has been playing. Like even Jared Goff was saying at 97 ticket today. Like he's just so smart, so instinctive. And one of the things that I kind of was like, wow, that's a good point. He said Sam never leaves his feet, which is interesting because if you think about it, you're a tight end. You're going up to catch a pass. Sometimes you leave your feet, but he says Sam Laporta never leaves his feet. Now we got some comments, so let's get to them. Dwayne Keene says we need to be ready for Sunday to stay focused, play hard, and have fun on both sides. Well, keep the gas pedal full throttle through the game. And then Ken says Laporta has been the most consistent player, and that's what I agree with. Like, look, Sam Laporta has been absolutely phenomenal. And I can only imagine what this offense is going to be when Jameson Williams takes that next step. I think he's close. But when you got Jahmyr Gibbs, when you got Sam Laporta, look, you needed these two guys. The fact of the matter is the defense isn't that good. The offense is going to have to carry this team. Is that going to get you far in the playoffs? Potentially not. Probably not. But is it going to get you a playoff win potentially? Yeah, it could do that. This is the team. It's this team you have right now with Sam Laporta, with Jahmyr Gibbs, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with Josh Reynolds, with Jameson Williams coming on, and Dave Montgomery and all those guys. This is gonna be the key identifier of your team. Like, you're gonna need Sam Laporta and all the offensive players to play their best week in and week out for the rest of the season. It's gotta be shootouts. You're gonna have to win games. You're gonna have to win games ugly, 31-38, 41-45. You're gonna have to win games like that. Just the reality. The way that this defense has been looking since the Baltimore game, you know, I was happy to see the offense get in their groove last week. I felt like in the second and third quarters they kind of had a little bit of mental errors, and there was just a little bit of things that they could have really got better at. But for the most part, the offense has been really, really good. So if we're gonna sit here and act like um, that the offense is an issue, the issue with the offense against the Green Bay Packers, against Chicago Bears, was simply they were turning over the ball. And now that they're not turning over the ball, it's a pretty special group, and you're going to need them. Let's put it factually. You are going to need Sam Laporta. You're going to need this offense, and thank God Sam Laporta has been great because, like I said earlier in the show, you're going to need a good offensive game from your team. And that's the key point. That's literally the key point. And we could sit here and we could talk about a lot of different things. But the Detroit Lions team, they have the opportunity to be a very, very they have the opportunity. So everything's in front of them. But this injury of Lee McNeil definitely hurts. So I really wanted to get to this. I got to it a little bit with the Sam Laporta. We obviously had some comments, so I wanted to get to those first. But when you look at Sam Laporta and you look at the difference making abilities that he has, when we look at Sam Laporta, we go, okay, he's a tight end. But if he's one of the best tight ends in the NFL, how much does that help this team? And then you think about it like this. You drafted Jameer Gibbs, you drafted Sam Laporta. There was a lot of people that I know were upset about not drafting Jalen Carter. And but when I came on the show, this was one of my pre-show ones. Obviously, you would love to have Jalen Carter right now with the loss of Lee McNeil. But if you were to say right now, you take Jameer Gibbs and Sam Laporta over Jalen Carter, would you do it? And I floated it by some people, and they said absolutely. There's people that said there's people that I trust that I talked to that work in the NFL that said absolutely I would go with Sam Laporta and Jameer Gibbs. But the key linchpin in that whole trade that they did for trading back was getting Brian Branch as well. And if you look at Brian Branch, this is one of the highlights on the defense. Branch 0.71 yards allowed per coverage snap in the slot this season. Third best among all slot defenders. Look, we could talk about a lot of things with the defense. There's a lot of issues. The pass rush, the corners. I mean, Cameron Sutton's been pretty bad. I know people look at Jerry Jacobs, but Jerry Jacobs, his quarterback rating against is actually better than Cameron Sutton, and his completion percentage against is actually better than Cameron Sutton. So when we say, oh my God, Cameron Sutton, or oh my God, Jerry Jacobs, we got to really realize that Jerry Jacobs is doing a pretty damn good job by himself. Um, so that's how it goes. So let's get to some more comments. Just a wild idea. I might consider Jameson Williams to practice and play a little defensive back. He would know wide receiver instincts. That's from Ken Fisher. Look, now is not the time to go play experimental in the games. You know, now is not the time to go play experimental with Jameson Williams. That's the last thing you want to do. This is the last thing you want to do. You're in a critical part of your season. You have a critical game against Chicago this week. I don't care how many of you think it's not critical. It's absolutely critical because the one thing that you do not want to do is you don't want to go into the last 3 games of the season where 2 are on the road and think we got to win one of these to win the division. You don't want to do that. Now, Steve Tracy, they promised to have special plays for Gibbs, not really anything special, and Montgomery looks gassed. I was very disappointed in the way that they handled Gibbs against the New Orleans Saints. I felt like I felt this. throughout the game, especially in the second quarter. I felt like they weren't using Gibbs to his full potential. I feel like if you give Gibbs the ball as a pass catcher, he can make things happen. I think he's that special a player. And I think when you got a guy like Sam Laporta, you have a guy like Jameer Gibbs, that you're able to throw out some wicked kind of pass plays. I think that if you send Jameer Gibbs out to the flat and then Sam Laporta is going over the middle, there's gonna be a lot of eyes from the linebackers on both players, and one of them is gonna get free. One of them is gonna get free. Darcy, my man, says not bad with no pressure. And that's what I said. When I looked at the Brian Branch stat, 0.71 yards allowed per coverage snap in the slot this season, third best among all slot defenders. I was really intrigued because that was a spot that Chauncey Gardner Johnson was supposed to play. And the fact that Brian Branch has came along this nicely. Earlier in the season he wasn't playing the same ball, but now he's starting to play better. He's starting to get more active in the pass game. And then you see what Jack Campbell could do at the middle linebacker spot where he should be permanently. You're just like, wow, what a great draft class. So that's what I look at. So, and if you guys missed it in the beginning of the show, obviously Lee McNeil went to the IR. Lee McNeil, 87.9 PF grade, second among Lions defenders, fifth among all defensive interior pass rushers, and that's a big loss. Just what can you say? I mean, you don't want to lose a guy like a Lee McNeil. Just don't, especially when you've had trouble before. But let's get to it. Um, I know there was something I wanted to get to. Oh, let's get to Dwayne Keene's comment on Facebook. He says we need to get the DPJ in there also to spread the field. Also, you know, one of the things this will go into my next topic. Okay, one of the issues that I had with Brett Holmes is that he took a risky pick with Hendon Hooker, and there's a lot of people that say Hendon Hooker is not a risky pick, but when your comps unilaterally are a mobile Bryce Petty and Desmond Ritter, color me, I'm not really excited to see that Hendon Hooker. But when you think about he took a shot on Hendon Hooker, which I'm fine with. I'm fine. If you think that you could nail a future stud quarterback, I'm fine with. I'm fine with you drafting a quarterback. Now I know Hendon Hooker because I watched a lot of Tennessee football and I'm not really a fan, but that's beside the point. Then you draft Broderick Martin, and neither guy has really played that much. And then to add to that, you get to the middle of the season, you know that there's no James Houston, you know that your pass rush is lacking, and they didn't make a deal for a pass rusher. I mean, at some point, desperation has to play into the fold. And if you think James Houston's going to come back right off the hop and be excellent, I don't know, man. I think that's a little bit of too hopeful, to be honest. But when I look at what Brad Holmes did, um, what he didn't do at the trade deadline, what he did in the draft, I felt there was left to be desired. I put out a post today about how, I wanted Kobe Turner, who's having a great year with the LA Rams, and Byron Young, the Tennessee player that they should have drafted, the edge who was playing with the LA Rams as well. And then, obviously Walt, my guy, he does the Lions Avenue show on this very page. He said he liked Brooks. Brooks is having a hell of a year with Green Bay. So it's just interesting because there was a lot of people last year who told me we don't need pass rush help. That was literally what I was being told by a lot of people, that we don't need pass rush help. We got James Houston. We got James Houston. We got our two staple, defensive ends. Well, when one gets hurt, what do? You rely on Josh Pascal, who has been very, very disappointing to me. You rely on old man Romeo Okwara and old man Charles Harris, and then John Kaminsky, who they re-signed last year because he did play a hell of a year last year. He's not the same. He's not playing at the same level, and it's totally mind-boggling to me that people totally just people think that you can't be critical of Brad Holmes. And look, I love all Brad Holmes moves. Brad Holmes has made some great moves. Drafting Amon-Ra St. Brown, drafting Kirby Joseph, drafting this guy, drafting Rodrigo, drafting this guy. He's made some freaking awesome moves. Jerry Jacobs is one of them. Jerry Jacobs was an undrafted free agent, and he's their second cornerback right now, and he's actually one of your better cornerbacks on this team. I feel like that third round that they had was a total waste. I felt like if Broderick Martin doesn't excel with the Lee McNeil being out, it's a total waste. What was the point? Because if Broderick Martin can't play 12 weeks into the season, can he play going into the future? Can he? I'm being honest with you. So it's just mind-boggling to me that when I post on the page, a lot of people are like, "Well, it's a part of the rebuild." I told you yesterday that they're in the third year of the rebuild. Okay, so there's going to be a little bit of things that are not like you want to see it. But I haven't liked what's been happening on the defense side of the ball. I feel like you should really put an emphasis on defensive players next year. I feel like the offense is good as it is. I feel like the defense needs some pillars. I mean, you can count Aiden Hutchinson as a pillar, maybe Jack Campbell, maybe Brian Branch. That's 3 players. But if you look at some of these teams like the San Francisco 49ers, let's go through the list, okay? Nick Bosa, Hargrave, Fred Warner, Greenlaw, Tuafunga, their safety. That's 5. And I think I'm missing someone else. So there's someone else. Then you got the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's go through it. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Sweat, uh, Hassan Reddick, Darius Slay. There's 5 right there. You potentially have like 1, maybe 2, maybe 2. Like we haven't seen enough of Jack Campbell and Brian Branch to say, yeah, those are pillars. Those are guys that you're going to rely on. So when you draft Broderick Martin in the 3rd round, you expect him to be something. When you draft Josh Pascal in the 2nd round, you expect him to be something. When you draft Levi Onwuzurike, you expect him to be something. Nothing from those 3. And I'm going to give Broderick Martin a chance to prove himself, especially with Lee McNeil being out. But this is a critical time. And if anything ever pops off, this is just going to be it's going to be very, very hard to be very just be very I'm not going to sit here and just say, "Oh, it's great." I'm not. Um I blame Holmes for my expectations too. Here's the thing. I don't blame Holmes for the expectations. I blame me for having the expectations that maybe they could be a better team than they were. When you see San Francisco struggling, when you see Philly, struggle last week when they got housed by San Francisco, maybe you're like, okay, maybe we are one of the better teams. And then you see Dallas and the talent that they have on defense, and that Dak Prescott's playing at a high level. I mean, here's the thing: the Lions defense isn't as bad as people think it is, but it's not as good as it should be. And I feel like with the amount of resources that they've put in the defense, the amount of players that are injured, I mean, it's hard to replace talent, especially mid-season when like a guy like Houston goes down and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson goes down, and a guy like and then a guy that you thought would come back and be healthy, and Emmanuel Mosley 2 plays in, gone. So you got 3 players that you probably were counting on that are gone. Not a good sign. Steve says 3rd round was a total waste of picks. I totally agree. Old Kaminsky sounds realistic. Man, look, he's been old. He's an older player, which I don't have any problem with older players. But at some point, the young guys got to really show out, and it can't just be Hutch. I mean, I feel bad for Hutch. I mean, here's the thing: Hutch needs to step up his game as well. But there's only so much the kid can do. There's only so much the kid can do, especially with Lee McNeil out now. What is he going to do? What is he going to do? I feel bad for Hodge. It's just a total bad situation. Joyce says, we need defensive talent. They are failing, but let's keep them strong. We are 9-3. We're playing football as team. Lions are the Detroit Lions. Yeah. Here's the thing. They're 9-3. The Lions are 9-3. With all the issues that we think that they have, they're 9-3. Period. That's a good point. But this game you got coming up against Chicago Bears, if we didn't think it was important before, it's vastly important now because of the potential of those 3 games at the end of the year where you got 2 against the Vikings, 1 against the Cowboys, 2 are on the road, 1's at home. You don't want to be in the position where you got to win one of them on the road to win the division. Because if you look at the Packers' schedule, I don't know if you've looked at it, it's soft as Charmin. And there's only probably one team that could be problematic for the Green Bay Packers moving forward. Ken Fisher says, wasn't it just a plan to win our division, get a home playoff game? I think we're on course to do that with what we have assembled. Problem is the fans want more now, and I think we've succeeded and need to enjoy the ride. You're right. I think a lot of fans have had unrealistic expectations to me, to be totally honest. I think if your realistic expectation was to go win a Super Bowl, it's just not happening. Period. You look at teams like the San Francisco 49ers. You look at the Eagles. You look at the Cowboys. I mean, those are teams that have been building for 5, 6, 7, even 8 years. Even 8 years. You're in year 3 of your rebuild. And your rebuild was starting over from scratch. Because what Matt Patricia did to this franchise, what Bob Quinn did to this franchise, they set it back a long time. And Brad Holmes has made impeccable progress. Dan Campbell has made impeccable progress. But at the same time, there's parts where you can go, okay, the Levi Onwuzurike pick wasn't a good pick. The Broderick Martin pick is looking like it could be a potentially bad pick. The Hendon Hooker pick, yeah, people might want to label him as a future. Was it what the Lions needed right now? No. They needed some pass rush help. Josh Pascal has been a total disappointment. Let's just be honest. Like, he has not got to the quarterback. He has not done what he expected of a second round pick. Period. Let's get to more comments on the Facebook. I think average fan just started out think just be better than hot start think fans in general. Just think we're so close. We need to go for broke, but their plan is to build for the future. We as fans are just starving as fans. You're right. I think partly you're right. Let me just put it this way. I think a lot of fans want to fast track this. I think a lot of fans look at this and they go, "Let's fast track this rebuild. Let's get to a Super Bowl." And I think the problem is with that is they've tried. There's been GMs in this town, mainly with the Lions, that have tried to fast track a rebuild, and all it's ended up becoming is just a pile of crap. Let's just be honest. Your main objective is to build through the draft, and Holmes has done it. Now, the second part of it is to build with free agent acquisitions, trades, whatever the case may be. You're gonna have to do that. I mean, if you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, they traded for Slay. Thank you, Bob Quinn. They signed, Hassan Reddick. They signed uh, James Bradbury. Like, this is what teams do. And then you look at the 49ers, same thing. They signed Hargrave. They traded for Chase Young. Like, at some point you're going to have to replenish your talent. Like, you can't go all drafting. So going into next year, I really do think that it's going to be huge to see what Brad Holmes does with his draft picks, with his free agency. What does he do? So that'll be interesting. Joseph Austin, my guy on the YouTube, says, I feel like the Lions can play with anyone. Now, look, I want to say they could play with anyone. The issue that I have is they can't get pressure on the quarterback. And I feel like if you can't get pressure on the quarterback with some of the quarterbacks that you're going to be going against, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is playing hell of a good football. So if you can't get pressure on those guys, they're going to pick you apart. Any good quarterback is going to pick you apart. That's my main thing. Like, you're going to have to win games offensively. You're not going to be able to win these 21-24 games because you don't have the defense to do it. And until Chauncey Gardner-Johnson comes back, until James Houston comes back, it's going to be the same old story. Like, you're hoping that you get those guys back by playoff time. You're hoping you get Lee McNeil back by playoff time. I know that Justin Rogers on Twitter said they talked to a team source and they're hopeful. They're hopeful that they can get Lee McNeil back by the playoffs. That would be the best case scenario. Seabass, isn't Hooker like 30 already? Well, yes, he is. He's 25, 26, something like that. He's an older player than, some of these guys coming in the draft. And here's the thing. I didn't care about the Hendon Hooker pick. I really didn't care about the Hendon Hooker pick. The issue I had with the Hendon Hooker pick, and this is just me, but do you see how many bad quarterbacks are in the NFL right now? I mean, we just had Tim Boyle start an NFL football game. Think that went through. Zach Wilson started for most of the season. Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, we had Tyson Bagent starting a game. We have Jake Browning starting for the Cincinnati Bengals. The amount of quarterback injury. Oh, we can't forget Tommy DeVito. My little Italian stallion over there in New York with the New York Giants. Desmond Ridder starts for the Falcons. If they didn't pick Hendon Hooker, why? They needed a quarterback. The Falcons needed a quarterback. Some of these teams needed a backup quarterback. Why didn't they draft him? And that's the kind of thing that scares me, because if other teams like the Falcons, who they realistically need guys, they need a quarterback. Desmond Ridder's not it. Taylor Heineke, not it. Just not good. Ken says, I predicted the Lions 12-5 with one playoff win at the start of the year would be awesome. My early upset of the stud Giants beating the Packers and Vikings losing to the Raiders. Yeah, I mean, yeah. You mean they beat the Raiders, so that's all right. He says my early upset of the week: Giants beating the Packers and the Vikings losing to the Raiders. That would be nice. That would be nice. Yeah, that would be nice if the Raiders beat the Vikings. That'd be nice if the Giants beat the Packers. I mean, it would really help you out. But here's the thing: the Lions got to take care of business. Period. End of story. And we could sit here all day long. We could hope that other people handle our business for us. But the reality of the situation is we got to go handle it. We got to go handle our own business. So go beat Chicago, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Now, there's a couple of things that are gonna derail this whole Chicago game. I don't know if you've looked at the weather, but it could potentially be snowing at Chicago this week. That'll be fun. More. We got more stuff to talk about. If you missed it early in the program, Lee McNeil to IR. So that sucks for this team and this defense. But I had in my show prep, there was something that I wanted to hit on, and I'm going to hit on it right now. I think that it's important to hit on it. So I asked about, what would you rather have? A good offense and a bad defense, or a good defense and a bad offense? You can only pick one. Obviously you're going to pick one of those guys. You're going to pick the good offense or the bad defense, or you're going to pick the bad offense and the good defense. That's what you're going to pick. So it's very critical. I think, here's the thing. I think there's multiple ways to win in the NFL. Like, there just is. There is multiple ways to win in the NFL. And no matter how we want to look at it, no matter how some people portray these offenses, you want to be good. You want to be good. But there's multiple ways to win. if you're a team that like there's teams out there that they win with great defense, they have an average offense, they just go out there and they just grind away. A lot of years the Patriots did that. The Patriots really didn't have a guy who you looked at on offense and go, "Oh, that guy's gonna beat us this week." No, you really didn't do that. And then you got teams like the Chiefs, with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce back in the day, where a couple years ago, where they would beat you with their offense, and their defense really would just kind of they would bend, they wouldn't break. Those are the type of things. So, would what would I prefer? I would prefer the offense in a bad defense because here's the thing: eventually, you are going to get in a scoring battle. And this is where I kind of align with some of these people that are in the comments saying, I think we can beat anyone. I think we can beat anyone. I think this offense can beat anyone. I think this offense can do enough to win games. I have if you just need two stops from defense. If you're in that shootout game like you were with the Chargers, you just need two stops. Joe on YouTube says offense, please. NFL likes scoring. And the NFL does like scoring. But you need a little happy medium. But if you're going to make me choose, I would rather choose the good offense with the bad defense because at least I know that at some point my offense is going to outscore the defensive mistakes. They're going to win more games than other teams because some teams just can't keep pace. And that's what I look at. Look. This is a great example by Steve. Look at Cleveland. No one fears your offense, but that defense could take advantage of an average offense all the way. Yeah, that's the one team that you could say. That's the one team that just it boggles my mind, to be honest. It boggles my mind that the Browns, with the quarterback troubles that they've had this year, are able to keep it together because of the defense. Now, the major thing that they have in Cleveland that's not going good is Myles Garrett just got injured, and he says he's going to play through it, but we'll see what happens. Myles Garrett is an animal, absolute animal, and a guy like that makes it very tough on the opposing offenses. So that's what I would look at. So we're getting to the end of the podcast. I don't have a co-host this week, so there's no one to kind of like throw stuff off of, but it's been a fun watching. I might jump on Walter's pod at 9:00 if you guys are still awake. We're going to be doing a pod at 9:00 at Lions Avenue. They're going to be doing a pod at 9:00. It's going to be a great pod. I know Walt's all fired up about it. It'll be fun to be watching, and maybe I'll jump on, maybe. But Walt's doing a damn good job with that Lions Avenue pod, and if you're on Facebook, give that Lions Avenue page a like and a follow. I'll put their thing on there. Before we go, Ken Fisher has a couple comments. The game has changed so much in the last 5 years. Passing has reached a new level of different ways to score. Defense years ago kept you in games, and turnovers would win them. And then he said, I would choose offense. So there's more people that chose offense than defense. It's an interesting dynamic. We'll get to it a lot more, but if you are new to the podcast, you can go follow us on Apple and Spotify. Obviously, this was a shorter show this week because I'm kind of by myself, and I kind of ran out of time asking other people to come on the show. So stay tuned. We're gonna have more coming. Obviously, Lions Avenue, and then Darcy's podcast tomorrow. He's gonna have Mel Farr on there. He's gonna have Matt Derry on there and John Macroon. You're not gonna want to miss that. That's gonna be a damn good podcast. So stay tuned for all the shows we got on this Detroit Lions News. I'm obviously the creator of the Detroit Lions News page, so having all these guys on there. Is great. I want to get to some comments because they're great. Ken Fisher's a great show. I appreciate Ken. Obviously when you're doing it by yourself, you can't really bant anything off other people. But Steve said it best. You're not by yourself. We're here. You did great. And I love the comments that I get from all the people because listen, it makes it a lot easier to do a show. especially when you're by yourself. Like that, it was great to just bounce ideas off each other. And thank you for guys for watching because, and if you're on the podcast, thank you for listening. I know there's a lot of people that listen to podcasts because they don't really like to listen to the live streams. Fine. But if you're kind of trying to figure out what's going on, we have to do the live stream on the Detroit Lions News Facebook page, and we do it on the Between the Whistles YouTube page. So Ken Fisher says, "Go Lions," and I'm going to leave you with that. Go Lions. Let's go. We got to win this game in Chicago. And I'll post more. Obviously, I'll post my game preview this week. We've got a lot of things coming this week, so stay tuned to that. It's only Tuesday, so but go look at the weather for Chicago game. Very, very tactical. Thanks to everyone who was watching, and I'll see you soon. Obviously, I might be on the Walter Lions Avenue podcast, so stay tuned to that, and we'll have a great time on there. And thank you guys for watching, and thank you for listening if you're on the Spotify and Apple. And I will see you guys soon. Obviously, I got my game preview coming up and all the content. You can go to Between the Whistles Detroit YouTube page for all the content if you're new to the page. So we'll see you soon. Thank you for listening and watching, and we will see you in the next podcast, which will be pretty soon. Go Lions.